Hello and welcome to the City of Sydney Reboot webinar series. My name is Kate Pearden and I'm back again in 2026 to host this special series. Now, before we start our session today, I'd like to acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional owners of the land in which each of us meet. And as we share knowledge and learning today, may we also pay respect to the knowledge embedded forever with their Aboriginal custodianship of country. Now, for those that have been on our Reboot webinar series, either this year or in previous years, you'll know it's all focused on practical and actionable insights to help business thrive across these three key phases: run, grow, and adapt. And AI today will be across the topics of run and grow and adapt for sure. If you were here from the conception, you'll know that Reboot was originally developed in the aftermath of the 2020 COVID-19 lockdown, and we're now in the sixth iteration. So this year we've got 10 consecutive 1-hour webinars. We're about halfway through the series. So if it's your first time today, make sure you sign up for the rest of our series. Same time, same place each week on a Tuesday. And we have a guest speaker today. The wonderful Nici is joining us, who will talk on a specific topic, share some case studies and tips that we can apply immediately. So, Reboot, proudly brought to you by City of Sydney, and a very quick acknowledgement to Service New South Wales Business Bureau, who is a valued long-time supporter of the Reboot program. And you also may have got an email from them talking about what topics we have coming up and joined us that way. All right. Over the next hour, the wonderful Dr. Nici Sweaney will be sharing a presentation of about 15 to 20 minutes on responsible use of AI for small business, a very, very hot topic, followed by some case studies of how businesses like yours apply this, and about 15 minutes of questions. You'll notice there is a webinar chat box. That is just for general comments during the session, but the questions, there's a Q&A box along the bottom if you're on a computer, and I think you need to scroll across if you're on a phone. That Q&A box is where I will be taking the questions from at the end. And there is going to be a recording of the webinar, but you don't get the slides. So you can take a screenshot or take a photo of information that is particularly interested to you, or make sure you check your email on Friday when this comes through to get your recording of this session. All right. Let me introduce you to the wonderful Dr. Nici Sweaney. We've had a wild chat in our green room so far, talking about all things AI, how she got to where she is, and most recently, why Reese Witherspoon is now a big fan of Nici Sweaney and passing out her details as the person to follow. So if you want to hear about that story, make sure you put a question in the Q&A box, and I'll do my best to get her to answer it for us. So let me tell you about how we've got the wonderful Dr. Nici Sweaney as our special guest today. She's internationally recognized as an ethical AI strategist and the founder of AI Her Way, a consultancy supporting organizations to adopt AI safely, ethically, and with confidence. And I think when it comes to AI, that is such an important thing because people feel quite concerned about the unknown, and the content today about the safety of AI, the ethics, and how you can feel like you use it confidently is so important when there's so many questions about AI. So how did Nici get to where she is? Well, she's got about 20 years experience as a scientist, educator, and a data strategist. And what I particularly like about Nici is that actually really informs how she thinks and how she approaches AI, which is quite different to someone that comes from, say, a tech point of view. Nici really thinks about the ecosystem of how everything works and knocks onto other things, which is really important with AI because we know it really spreads out and connects to everything. Her work focuses on AI use, data protection, and building internal capability so organizations can make informed decisions rather than being dependent on tools that they don't fully understand. And look, if I'm honest, AI, I've definitely looked into it, and I host these sessions. I still feel there's a lot of tools that I think, where does this go? How is my information being used? What is the impact on the environment? A lot of those questions are going to be answered today. You may have seen Nici featured in Forbes, Australian Financial Review. She's also done over 100 keynotes, workshops, training sessions, including for United Nations, TEDx, Paramount Plus, Canon, Australian government. And this bit I think is really important when it comes to AI is it's not just Nici saying she's great at AI. She is the senior fellow at the AI for Developing Countries Forum and contributed to the Australia's National Responsible AI Guidelines, supporting the development of ethical and accountable AI practices. So Nici just doesn't know her stuff. She is on the places for the things, the people that are in the know. And that's why we feel so fortunate, Nici, to have you here today.
Thank you so much. Such a lovely introduction. I sound like I've done some things.
Oh, you have done so many things, and I can't wait to learn from you today, as well as the hundreds of people that are in our session today.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Well, hello to everyone joining us. It's such a pleasure to have you all here as part of Reboot. We're going to get straight into it because I just want to cover off everything that I want to cover off so we have lots of time for questions. I know from doing many of these, as Kate mentioned, most of the time people are coming to this stuff just because they have a burning question about how they're already using AI or how their team is using it or what they're wanting to do with it. And it's really helpful to have someone that's seen this play out in a multitude of different organizations in various industries in different countries. They can kind of lend a helping hand because we're all working this out together. So it's really nice to be in a space where we can have those sorts of conversations. So just to start off with, the first thing we're going to do is just run a couple of little questions as a bit of an icebreaker to get us started. So the first one here is, do you work for or run a social enterprise or for-purpose company? Right? So it's just a yes, no, not sure. What is a social enterprise, right? So if you could pop in your vote, that would be fantastic. That's just to get an idea of who is in the room. I think particularly I also work a lot with social enterprises or for-purpose companies, but it isn't because I only cater to those. It's just because that's quite often the people who are most cautious when it comes to leveraging new technology because we have a really profound sense of what the right thing is to do.
Absolutely. I'll end that poll now and just share those results. And
Thank
also, as
you.
part of the City of Sydney, who runs and supports this reboot series, they're wanting to know how best to support social enterprise and
Mm.
for-purpose companies. And so it is great for us to see who's joining on these calls and if that's hitting for our social enterprise and for-purpose companies as well.
Amazing.
Thanks,
So we have
Nikki.
about a 60-30 split between people in other sorts of corporations, and then, yeah, around about a 25%, a quarter of you in those social good or for-purpose companies. So welcome to everyone that is joining us. The next little poll that we have. So, did you want to add anything here, by the way, Kate, before I jump into the next poll
No,
question?
let's
Okay,
roll and
awesome.
see what
All right.
people's concerns are using
So
AI.
we have two questions related to AI. The first is, what is your biggest concern when you're using AI in the workplace? Is it the environmental cost? Is it data security? Is it the fact that it might give you false information or what we call hallucinations? Is it the risk to your reputation, potentially the loss of human intellect, or worried about the loss of critical thinking, or all of it? What's your biggest concern?
Great. I'm going to close this in 3 seconds. Get voting. All right.
Felicity, I love it. Actually, everything on the list. Okay, amazing. So yeah, half of you said yes to it all. And then we're going to talk about data security and false information. So the amazing thing is we're going to touch on these risk factors, and in the question time, absolutely please feel free to bring forward those questions about how you're currently using it. As mentioned, I advise governments on safe use, but I also do a lot of work in governance and regulation at the company level too. So more than happy to help you out with your particular area. All right, and last question before we jump into it is, where do you currently use or plan to use AI in your work? Marketing, sales, client relations, customer management, admin, strategy, research and data analytics, human resources, finance, legal, product development, or again, you can tick them all. This just
This
gives
is a
us a
multiple choice.
yeah,
I
just gives
say,
us a little bit of an idea around where are we currently seeing those good use cases for AI, or what are those hotspots that you're like, oh, I really feel like AI could help me in this area.
I know a few people will be looking at this list going, oh, I had not thought of using it for strategy or research, or oh, I could use it for that. So
Yeah,
this is
spoiler alert, you can use it for all these things.
yeah. So maybe take a photo or a screenshot of this. If you're thinking,
Yeah.
I need ideas, here's your idea list. All right, I'm going to give you 3 more seconds for this one. Three, two, one. All right, let's have a look at our results.
Okay, so a lot of usage across the board. I see the
Hmm.
highest uses, not surprising, in marketing and then strategy, research, and admin operations, which is really similar to what I see across the now hundreds of organizations I've worked with. These really high repetition, high content areas, such as marketing and administration and operations, are often where businesses first see that return on investment and it's worthwhile having these systems in place. But as we said, you actually can use AI across all of these sectors. As you'll learn today, it's really about ensuring that we're using it safely and ensuring that AI actually reflects our brand and our business so that it's upholding our values and it's not damaging our reputation that we've worked so hard for. So that's amazing to see such widespread usage across the board inside of your business. Okay, so what are we going to be talking about today? Um, I'm going to get straight into it. We're going to go through the risks. What are people worried about? As we've already seen, you're worried about everything, which I always think is a really good thing. I always tell people that I don't do this work because I need to convince you to use AI everywhere without abandon. I do this work because AI offers a lot in terms of efficiency, productivity, and innovation, but there are also dangers that are inherent with it. And I want people to be able to use it in a responsible way so you get all of that positive outcomes without those negative repercussions potentially. I'm going to give you just a simple rule to know should you be using AI and how can you stand by your usage of it. And then we're going to talk through some use cases. And I'm going to touch on what I always advise businesses is your kind of last remaining frontier. What is the thing that's going to keep you competitive? What is the thing that's going to keep you ahead as more and more businesses and companies adopt and leverage artificial intelligence? So the first thing to acknowledge is that we know that most businesses are now using AI. So I often talk about, we've had a lot of rhetoric. There's a lot of stories out there about how using AI will get you ahead, right? That, if you're using it, you're in the top 1% or you're ahead of the curve. We're in a position now where generative AI is around about 3.5 years old, which means that it's no longer the competitive advantage just to use it. It's really about the way that you use it. So currently around about 65% of businesses are leveraging AI. More than 80% of leaders think that it's a really important priority over the next 12 to 24 months to invest more money into how you use AI. However, on the flip side of that, there is a lot of throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks right now. Like there is a lot of just haphazard, Joe in this department uses Claude for this, and Sally over here built something cool with ChatGPT. We don't necessarily have a strategy for it. We don't understand which tools are being used. We don't understand how many people have access to them. We don't really understand if they're giving us a return on investment. There's just a lot of kind of noise out there. We feel cool because, yeah, we've got this agent that's doing this thing, but no one's really tracked if it's doing it well or if it's actually saving you time or money or producing more positive outcomes. That leads to a lot of fear. We've seen the headlines. You might have seen the law firm that took a case to court, had ChatGPT write their notes, and it produced a false case that they cited in court and got into a lot of trouble about that. You might have seen some of the health data where AI tools were misdiagnosing women's health conditions and kind of telling them to take a Panadol and just relax. You might have seen some of the notes around bias with, using AI tools to see if students were cheating and then falsely misrepresenting what they had done and then getting them in trouble when they'd actually produced something from scratch all by themselves. There's a lot of PR out there around when AI goes wrong. So naturally, we have fear about it, which means that we're not really leveraging it in a strategic way, or we're being overly cautious and we're saying, hey, I don't want to use it yet until we've kind of figured it all out. Neither of those things let us adapt or innovate, and neither of those things put you ahead. Right now, we have a very small early adopter window. So until 2027, you are still classified as an early adopter of AI. And there's been some really awesome modeling that shows that early adopters are set to double their revenue within the next 4 years because of the uplift that being an early adopter of AI will give us. If we leave it later than 2027, we're a follower. and we're not getting the advantage. Think about it like using computers. If you meet a business right now that's solely on paper, and then all of a sudden they switch to a digital platform tomorrow, yeah, they're just doing what everyone else does. It's not special anymore. So we've got a really small window to be special. And that's what I want for you. I think that especially as small businesses and small and medium businesses, AI produces an opportunity to play at a really big level because you've got access to unlimited resources now. But the flip side of that is, yeah, I really don't want you to damage your brand and your reputation by using it irresponsibly as well. So we do have a bit of a time pressure, but that's okay because time pressure can result in lots of innovation and really fun things. You've got to be aware of the risks first, though.
Nikki, I'm just
So,
going to jump in. I've
yeah.
just noticed a couple of people have raised their hands. Just because we've got hundreds of people in this webinar, we don't have the opportunity for raised hands. If you've got a question, please pop it in the Q&A chat box along the bottom and we'll get to those as many as we can at the end. Or if it's just a general comment or agreement, feel free to pop that in the webinar chat. So I
Amazing.
will pop those hands down now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, so I'm going to cover three big risks, and we absolutely can come back to more of the risks that you're concerned about when we get to the Q&A section of today, but these are the really kind of big three ones that I want to make sure that we touch on. So the first here is privacy. If you use artificial intelligence, generative AI tools, free or paid, I want you to assume that by default, everything that you put inside of it is shared with whoever owns that platform because they want data in order to improve their tools, right? Almost every single tool, especially if you pay for it or if there is enterprise licensing available, has an option to turn data sharing off. But normally, whenever I go into an organization, there is 60% of the room that are using tools, and maybe two of them have ever turned data sharing off or have ever even looked into how they're sharing their data. So, just by default, I want you to assume that up until this point, unless you have turned something off, unless you have opted out of data sharing, most likely you have been sharing everything that you've done with that AI tool up until this point with the owners of that tool. Now, if you're freaking out right now, I just want to say,
People are freaking out in the chat.
yeah, one, that's totally okay. It happens everywhere. Like I'm talking the biggest multinational, most sensitive health, vulnerable data IP companies that I've ever worked in that are working in medicines and, high kind of copyright areas. This stuff is happening. So forgive yourself that you're doing it. Two, it is very unlikely. I can't come on to an AI tool tomorrow and say, like, hey, what was Kate talking about yesterday? Tell me all her secrets. It's not quite how it works. It just means that there is a chance that because you've put together a particular string of ideas or characters, there is a chance that that same string of ideas or characters gets kind of meshed together and put out somewhere else. So, first and foremost, I want you to investigate how to turn data sharing off in the given tool that you are using. Like I said, with every single tool, and I'm thinking about the major large language models out there, there is an option to opt out of data sharing. It's just really good to know where your data goes and who owns it. We kind of apply this different lens. So in the past, when we work on something very sensitive in our workplace or a new idea, we have this understanding that we don't go and share it with our competitors or we don't go and post about it on online forums. Because AI is new and shiny, humans have gotten a little bit lazy at applying that same thinking to this technology. So it's really important to remember that AI is a tool. It's amazing. It does not by default protect you because the tool is owned by somebody else. Now, there are whole other conversations I could do about locally hosted large language models that never share your data. There are totally options out there. We work with healthcare, we work with people that work with children, we work with people that work with patents, across really sensitive areas. There are always options of how to leverage AI. Your option is not, I deal with sensitive information, therefore I don't use this technology. That is not the way, but your first thing you have to do is be informed about where your data goes. Okay, the second one is wrong answers, or we call them hallucinations in the world of AI. So think about it like this. When you're using generative AI, I want you to always remember that, at least for now, it is like a 17-year-old intern and a Labrador crossed together. And so, what I mean by this, if you think about a 17-year-old intern, they're super keen. They're top of their class. They're very interested. They love you. They think your industry is amazing. They've been desperate to come and work for you, but they don't really have a lot of context about how you in particular do things. They also aren't great at volunteering when they don't know how to do something because they really want to impress you because they're there for their intern week, right? And if you think about that cross with a Labrador, Labradors do everything for a treat, right? Like you got to hide dog food from a Labrador. So Labradors are desperate for your approval and will like backflip as soon as you start getting the bag of food out. They'll do like their 17 tricks in a row just in the hopes that one of them has impressed you enough for you to feed it. When you work with generative AI, it's that. It's so desperate to please you. It's a product, right? And it's a product designed to keep you using it. The best way to make humans use something is to make them feel like they're really smart and cool and hot and intelligent and interesting. So, generative AI always wants to please you, which means that when you ask it questions, if it slightly doesn't know the answer, or if it finds something that's kind of related and accidentally falls down a weird, like Google rabbit hole that's not quite related to your question, it's very unlikely that generative AI will be like, "Oh, I don't really understand what you're talking about there. Would you mind trying to explain it a different way?" It's much more likely that AI will say, "Oh, I'm not totally sure what this person's talking about, but I'm so desperate to have them like me that I'm just going to give them a whole bunch of answers in the hopes that one of them is close enough to the real thing." So, this is why AI sometimes gives us wrong answers. It's not malicious, it's not trying to mislead us, it's just trying really hard to make us happy, and it made an accident, and it doesn't want to volunteer that it's made an accident. So, the second one here is just to always remember that you are the thinker. AI is your collaborator, right? It can propel your thinking, it can amplify your thinking, but you should never trust it to do all the thinking for you because it has a propensity to potentially not capture all the facts. And the other big thing is, even when it captures facts, it's only one version of them. It's just the version of it that it came up with that time. Generative AI generates a new answer every time it's asked a question. That's the generative part of generative AI. So it means that if we delegate it and ask it to think for us and we're not engaged at all, we're kind of rolling the dice every time we ask it a question. However, as I'll talk about, when we talk about how to use it well, when you constrain that context, when you become very clear about how you want it to make decisions about what information you find important, then it can be amazing. It can amplify what you're able to do. It can 10 times your revenue and output and innovation because you've controlled what good looks like. And it's really important to always remember that that's your responsibility. It's not the responsibility of AI to do that on your behalf because it doesn't actually care. It's just going to pretend that it cares, but it doesn't actually care. All right, the third one there is reputation. This kind of goes hand in hand with privacy, with wrong answers. Again, it's just to remember that in a world where most content is generated by AI, in a world where AI is filtering through options for consumers and presenting them with something, in a world where AI will give people advice, in this increasingly kind of AI washed existence that we're all going to live in, then it's really easy to get kind of swept up in the romantic notion that AI can do so much, so therefore I should get it to do all those things. And there is a point where that is going to make you lose your humanity, right? So there is a question around what can AI do and what should we get it to do? And I'm going to come back to this, but it really comes down to where does that human touch really matter? Where does the nuance really count? And where is the relationship the most important factor here? Because those three things are very hard for AI to replicate properly. And as I'll come back to, they're also kind of your secret weapon in an AI age. So these risks are already happening. You know that. I mean, I know when I kind of talked about privacy, everyone was like, oh God, I've shared some stuff I maybe shouldn't have. Everyone does. It absolutely has happened. We think there is data to support that around 1 in 5 small businesses have already shared sensitive data with public AI tools. It is rife. It's just really important to understand that you have an option to stop it. And it's your responsibility to understand when you're talking with these tools, when you're sharing images, when you're sharing ideas, thoughts, speech, when you're letting it look at your inbox. It's really important that you understand the privacy of that. It is akin to hiring a new employee. You wouldn't just tap someone on the shoulder on the street and say, hey, here are all my passwords. Have fun. You would do some vetting. You would make sure they've got a security clearance. You would give them their own logins, right? It's applying the same logic. Like you're all good at it. You're all leaders. You're all working with other people. You all understand how your business operates. We just need to remember to apply that same thinking to AI. AI is your new employee. It's important to treat it like that. You have to make it earn trust from you rather than give it trust by default. All right.
Great explanation, Nikki. And there's a lot of resonance coming through in the chat. And there's a couple of questions that have been popped in the chat. I'd love it if you could put them in that Q&A box along the bottom because they'll get lost in there by the time we get to Q&A. So please pop those in that Q&A box and we can answer those at the end.
Yeah, amazing. And like Helen and Ellen, I'd love to come back to these questions too. So please make sure, yeah, again, just pop them in that Q&A because there's some really awesome points being raised here. All right, so I've talked about what is unsafe. Let's have a think about what's safe and unsafe, just by default. And I'm going to preface this by saying what is safe and unsafe actually moves the more that you use AI and the better that you are at leading it. So I'm going to come back to this with the case studies. But for example, something that you say, hey, I'm never going to put clients' names into AI by default. That is a great place to start. That may not be where you always are because you can make different choices about tools. You can make different choices about your technology infrastructure. There's lots of options which may get to a point that it is completely okay for you to share client names with AI. So what I want to preface this by saying is start off as safe as possible and then only move the needle as that trust is earned, just like you do with an employee. You don't just send them to the corner office and give them all the logins to your stuff and just like cross your fingers and hope that they've done a good job. You explain tasks, you review closely, you have lots of conversations, you eventually kind of give them more and more autonomy once they've proven that they're doing the work for you. So the one line, right, is if you wouldn't post about it, if you wouldn't stick it on your Facebook page, for anyone that's still using Facebook, I am one of those people, by the way. If you wouldn't stick it on your Facebook page, if you wouldn't post about it on TikTok, if you wouldn't comment on it on a Reddit forum, then think twice before putting it into AI. Particularly if you're unsure about where the data is going, particularly if you're unsure about who owns the tool that you're using, right? Just if you wouldn't post about it publicly, don't put it into AI. That's the safest rule. That's where I tell everyone to start. And then you can kind of, again, you can move it once you've got that trust in there, once you're a little bit more informed about the tools, all of that kind of stuff. But for example, this is why marketing and admin and operations are often pretty safe places. If we think about marketing, mostly everything that we are talking about in marketing is going to end up in a public forum, right? It's going to end up in an email or online or on sales page or on our socials. So therefore, talking about marketing concepts with any AI tools, probably pretty safe. If on the other side, you want to put in your whole profit loss statements about where each line of revenue came from against every single offer and all of your costs, that would be something I would want to be sure that you're using a safe tool in order to do any of that kind of stuff, because that's not something that we want just posted on public forums, right? Easiest way to think about it. Again, if you wouldn't print it on the front page of a paper, don't paste it into AI. At least not until you've done your due diligence about what that tool is, who owns your data, and how safe your data actually is. That's the best rule. All right. Now, I want to talk about how to use it well. So, I talk a lot about safety. My whole kind of business thing is like we're ethical AI consultants. We are concerned around environmental costs, IP, data security. We're concerned around perpetuating bias, stereotypes. There's a whole other 3-hour talk I could give about gender inequality inside of these tools. There's a lot of risks associated with just haphazardly using these tools. But on the flip side, there is so much you can gain from it. So just in my business, I have two human employees part-time, and I have around 40 AI agents that work for me 24/7. So it
Now,
means that,
Nikki, you might have to explain what an agent is.
oh, yes, okay, sorry. So an agent is the AI equivalent of a manager, right? So what agents do is you give them an objective. So say we just ran a launch program. So we're running this offer. We want 200 people to sign up to it, right? And an agent's job as head of marketing, for example, is to decide on the strategy in order to achieve that objective. And once they've decided on the plan, they actually delegate all the work to a series of sub agents and AI systems that live underneath its jurisdiction. So if I'm the head of marketing, but I'm AI and I work for AI Her Way, then I go, great, Nikki wants 200 people to sign up to this thing. I think we're going to have to run a social media campaign. We're going to need some emails. I'll need a new landing page. We'll need some customer service for people that email to us. So I'm going to call in my staff members and I'm going to say, hey, head of social media, here's some stuff I need you to create content around. I'm going to ask our email marketing strategist to write a series of emails. So they actually delegate the work to all the sub agents that live underneath them. They all deliver on that work. The head of marketing reviews it, provides feedback, and they work together tracking against that objective in order to reach the outcome.
And you can then use
That
that
help?
agent over and over. And once you've built it, you use it over and over.
Yes. So this agent just comes to work every time we've got something
Mhm.
that's involved with the head of marketing, right? Yeah. So they have their own roles and responsibilities. They work autonomously outside of us telling it. It's not like an AI tool where you open it and you say, can you please write me an email? This is a head of marketing agent that understands what we're working on in a bigger picture. And when it detects that some of that work relates to its roles and responsibilities, it just picks up that work and starts to execute a plan in order to achieve it. Right. So, there's a lot that can be gained by this too. I mean, we have massive opportunities that would never have been an option for us before, just in terms of impact, but also revenue. And in terms of, I've got Fridays off with my partner. All four of our kids are at school on Fridays. It's like the best day of the week because we go to the beach, we have coffee, we have a lunchtime nap, and then sometimes we go out for a cocktail and then we pick all the kids up from school. Like it's awesome. And that's not no would not have been possible before this, right? As like a founder in a small but very high volume business, there is just no way that I could have a 4-day work week before I had these systems working for us. So part of doing that is using AI really well, right? So we talked about risks. Part of mitigating the risks is being good at using AI because that actually by default takes care of lots of the inherent risks, particularly with reputation hallucinations and bias and stereotyping. So using AI properly, the best thing to remember is again that it is a brand new intern, Crosswell Labrador, that's come to work for you. So, what I find happens with a lot of people is that they open their AI tool and, they say something like, yeah, write me a marketing email for this product. And then they get the email and they're like, yeah, maybe it's all right once, maybe it's not the next time. Maybe the third time you do it, you have to get into a 40-minute argument with your AI tool because you don't like it. And then you kind of left feeling like, I don't know how great this AI stuff really is. And I'm certainly still involved with it all, even if it makes me a bit faster. What you have to think about is that AI tool, all it is, I'm presuming you're using a large language model, so your Chat GPTs, your Claude, your Copilots, your Geminis, your Perplexities, your Pose, your Manus, your DeepSeek, all of those ones. All that is a whole bunch of human language and algorithms trained to recognize the patterns in that language. Yes, it knows heaps about heaps, but because it just has all this data in there, the way that it packages that data up is all down to what you ask of it. So the best thing to remember is it is completely new to you, your industry, and your job. And you have to provide it with the enough detail, like it's a brand new staff member that's never worked in your industry before, that has no idea who you are, and it's the first time they've ever done this thing. And that shift is a really big unlock for a lot of people. And I'm going to show you an example about what this looks like in my tool that runs my inbox, right? So you'll get a little look. But basically you have to tell it who are you, right? You have to give it a role to play. You have to give it context about who you are, where you work, how you like things done, what's your mission, what are your values, who do you serve, what are your offers, what's your brand language, and then, hey, now you know all of that. I want you to do this particular job for me. This is the way I want you to do it. This is how we define what good is. This is how we define what bad is. Here are 4 examples about how I did it last time that I really love. These are some rules I want you to follow. And by the way, the first time you do it, I want you to ask me a whole bunch of questions so that you've got all the information you need. Can you see how that's much more approaching how I would onboard a staff member, right? Like if I was asking Kate to help me, I wouldn't just be like, oh, Kate, can you just do this client report? Because she'd be like, I don't know what you do for client reports. Like who is the client? How big is the report? Where do we get the information from? How do you structure it? Do you use subheadings? Do we have a Word document? Is there a template for this? I'd have to provide all of that in order for her to do a good job of it without me having to rewrite every single sentence. It's the same thing when you're using AI. And when you are specific, you're also controlling for a lot of those risks. When I start to describe how I make decisions, when I start to describe what is good versus what is bad, when I start to be very explicit about the words we do and don't use and how exactly we sound with our clients, I'm automatically mitigating for a lot of those inherent risks when it comes to using this technology because I'm controlling for the bias and stereotype. I'm controlling for it just making up answers because I haven't given it enough instructions. I'm controlling for that brand reputation because I'm giving it enough information in order to achieve a good quality outcome. All right.
Just to check in on
Yeah.
time. I know we've got a lot to cover and a few case studies, but our Q&A is lighting up. So
Okay.
you've
Well,
got plenty.
I've maybe got 4 minutes we're going to do this in.
Sounds
Yeah.
great.
All right, cool. So the last thing before I do the case studies is just that the final thing that you need to remember is that the trust economy is booming. So
Mm,
what we mean by this is again, right now using AI is probably a bit of a competitive advantage because not everybody is. Certainly using it well is definitely a competitive advantage because that is a very small number of people. However, and I say this as someone whose business model is teaching people AI, I'm not going to have this job forever because at some point these tools will be so frictionless, they'll be so embedded into every product that there won't be a question around do you use it well or not? It will just be how everything functions, right? It's a bit like asking the question like, do you use the internet well? And it's like, what does that even like, yeah, maybe there is 1% of the population that has to have really good use for a specific use case, but the general workforce is doing just fine in however they use the internet. AI will shift to that same landscape. And at that point, the only thing left is how you make people feel. It's the trust. That is the thing that protects your brand and your business and is the thing that you want AI to serve, not degrade away, right? So trust and human relationships, they are the 2 remaining things when AI comes for everything else. And it will, whether or not we like it or whether or not it's good
mm.
for us. That's a whole nother series. But trust and human relationships are what will remain. So double down on those. And what I tell people is leverage AI to take care of the repetitive and the mundane to make space for you to double down on trust and human relationships. You need time and space and resources in order to be really good at human relationships and trust and networking and the feeling that people get from you. So that's how I see it playing out. We park AI to take care of a lot of things for us so that we can do this part. So let's go through 2 case studies of people doing that well. So, case study number 1. We worked with a physiotherapist, and the physiotherapist had around a team of 20. And at the time, each person was spending around 12 to 20 hours a week in NDIS reporting because they had a whole bunch of different types of reports that needed to be completed per person in order to claim NDIS funds for that patient. So what we did is we built them a suite of custom bots. We actually built 12, I think. We built 12 custom bots, each one of them trained on how they did a particular type of NDIS report. So this was loaded into their specific platforms. It was loaded with how they write each section, what should be included, the type of language they used, what their motive was for each section, and templates and examples of how they did it in the past. And then because we didn't want these bots to just write all the reports for the physiotherapist, what they were trained to do is actually interview the physio and ask them questions about how their meeting or consult just went with their patient. And then with that personalized information, use all of their context and their instructions in order to produce the report. So it meant that we went from 12 to 20 hours per physiotherapist to around 30 minutes of editing or just speaking through an interview with a bot in order to get that finished product. And what that meant is they were able to take on more patients, but they were able to spend more time with their patients and nurturing those relationships and achieving better outcomes for their patients. It wasn't that they just parked it all with AI and they never looked at it again. It was this iterative process, this collaborative process with a tool that just made it much faster and a lot more consistent across physiotherapists because they're all using the same bots trained in the same guidelines for each piece. Now, just so you know that it's not always roses, I also wanted to give you a case study about where it has not gone well. Because the big part of leveraging AI is that you have to actually get your people to use it, right? There's no point building a tool that does NDIS reporting if none of the physiotherapists actually integrated with the tools or remembered to use them or learnt how to use them well. So the other case study I wanted to give is we actually worked with two different marketing agencies. And this is like pointing out, one of my work failures. So this is like a vulnerable share, but I think it's a really good story. So we worked with two different marketing agencies at two separate times. They had the very similar problem. They wanted to have AI agents that were trained on each one of their clients so the agents could help do the marketing strategies and produce content for each client, right? Now, we gave them both the same tool and the same setup and the same training. One marketing agency, when we met with them 3 months later, they were like, Nici, my God, like we've hired someone who now manages all of our AI agents. We have reduced blog post spend. So we now spend about 70 cents on a blog post as opposed to 4 hours of employees' time. We've got a whole suite of agents for each single client. So now we can take on more clients because as soon as a client signs with us, we've got this whole support system in the back end that is automatically trained on them and their brief and can start producing stuff in the way that we do it. It's amazing. What can we do next, right? They loved it because they'd made time to play with it. They'd put somebody in charge of it and they had a systematic approach for how they scaled that from, the first thing into something that supports every single client. The second agency that we worked with, we got to the end of our engagement and quite frankly, they just hated everything that happened. And they were like, we've got nothing out of this. Nothing has changed. I don't know how this tool operates, we're not going to use it. And through that process, what had happened is they just wanted us to set it all up and for it to just work. And they didn't open the tool because we could see when people logged in and out. They didn't open the tool, they didn't test anything, and they weren't using it on a regular basis except to look at it before they'd walk into the next meeting with us. And so what happened there is because they didn't make any time or space to change their behavior, AI didn't magically solve all their problems. And I wanted to use that case study because I find this a lot. I have conversations with businesses who are just like, we've got this problem. I want AI to fix it. AI actually doesn't magically fix anything yet. If you don't understand what good looks like for you, AI can't make that decision on your behalf, or it will, but it won't be great. If you don't understand how you like something to work, AI cannot make that decision for you. AI is an amplifier. If your systems are messy, if your rules are messy, if the way that you work is messy, AI will just make it messier faster. If you have really good systems, if you understand what good looks like, if you can clearly articulate your expectations, AI is your great amplifier. So, last little thing, let's go straight to Q&A. This is just a look at my inbox manager system, right? So, in this system, I have a skill. So, I have not quite an agent, but I have a set of instructions that live inside this particular AI tool that every day can surface my what's important, what I need to reply to today, what's just FYI. It also can pick up any emails that come from clients and then match it to their internal client project, do a summary of where work is at, and then draft a response in our voice to give them an update on a project. It can pull out tasks, add it to my calendar, add it to our project management software tool as well. It also can pick up when an email should be delegated to my team and forward it to my human team members with a note about why it's being forwarded to them and what's happening. Now, that only works well because it's got this amount of detail in it. So when I talk about, briefing AI really well, using it well, I literally have pages of instructions about just how I manage my inbox because I need to be really sure that it's going to make decisions like me. So it's not just, hey, can you give me a summary of my inbox? It's how do I define what's worth responding to right now? How do I define what's FYI only? How do I delegate to my team? What are they responsible for? What are my current clients? How do I talk to them? How transparent would I like to be with them about how we are using AI? What is my tone and style? What words do I use? What words don't I use? How do I write my summaries? How do I want you to present my inbox back to me? This is like a really, really beefy standard operating procedure just for how I tag my emails. But that's the level of detail I need to get to in order to be sure that AI will make decisions that reflect how I make decisions, not just leaving it up to roulette and then having all these risks leak in and having it send weird emails to my clients that end up damaging our brand reputation. I will just on that one as well say that we also type into our emails that this email has been written by Nici's AI email assistant. It is not my prerogative to cheat people into thinking it's me. I actually think it's more impressive to know that AI is handling my whole inbox and cool, I got a reply from her email assistant straight away. So we're going to go to questions. While we switch into questions, and Kate, you get ready for that first one, these are your last little bits of advice, right? To keep yourself safe before you start. Would you post it on the front page of a paper or put it on your Facebook, right, feed? If you wouldn't, maybe think twice about putting it in AI. And if you're dealing with names and personal data, very much think about making that data anonymous before you work with AI tools. While you work, did you provide it enough context? And did you give an example about what good looks like to you? People all the time say like, oh, I feel like AI can't do X, Y, Z. I say to them, it's probably a you problem, not an AI problem. You need to direct it more clearly. Okay. Pressure test it for accuracy, ask it to think about its answers, and always make sure there's a human involved somewhere along the way because it's just one of your employees. It's not a co-owner, right? It's just one of your employees. So make sure there's a human involved somewhere along the way. All right, let's go to questions, okay?
Great. I'll pop up this poll for people to vote on what they want to apply from today. And I will get into, that should pop up now for you. I'll get into our Q&A. Okay. A lot of general questions around sort of the ethics of AI taking jobs.
Yeah.
And you talked about you have 2 part-time people and 40 agents. Like the future for the workforce is grim. And there's been, a lot of different questions and comments about that
Yeah. Yeah.
approach.
Look, it's a really good point to raise. I think it's sugarcoating it to pretend like this isn't changing the workforce. I guess what
Mm,
I tell people to think about, I mean, we call AI the fourth industrial revolution for a
yes.
reason. If we think about the invention of the combustion engine, the last industrial revolution, yes, that unequivocally changed what jobs were available to people and what we did with our time and what industries were open to us and what the average kind of workday looked like. Now, when we're all out in crops and fields, it's not like everyone was sitting around going, oh, look, there's a combustion engine. I can't wait to sit at a computer and answer emails for 8 hours every day. That's my future. We didn't know that that was the future until it kind of got figured out. So I guess what I say is like, we can't just keep the status quo just because. That's just not how things work. What it does do is it kind of levels up what is possible. So when I think about the people I have working for me, yes, I have an assistant, but I didn't hire my assistant to read my emails and reply. I hired my assistant to read the AI drafts and hit send. So it just means that she's able to do different things with her time, and there are different opportunities for us. So there is a responsibility for upskilling. There's also new jobs being created by AI. But yes, it's very real that we will have a transition in the workforce, and that's part of what we'll have to manage. I also think humans are really adaptable. We're animals. We will find something to do with our time. We just don't know exactly what that will look like in the meantime.
Hmm.
That being said, there's really great studies that if you are able to use AI, you actually command about 35% increase in your salary compared to people that can't use AI. So it's really worthwhile to kind of understand how it does impact your job so that you can adapt to it. I absolutely hire people that can use AI. I still don't want to be the person that manages all my AI. What I need is people that understand how the systems work so that they can take on that responsibility as well.
Thanks, Nikki. I've just shared those results from our poll on the screen of what
Pretty
people
even
are
split.
excited about.
Yeah, love it. Okay, that's awesome. Yes, knowing what's possible, how to prompt well, how to apply it, knowing how to use it safely. That's awesome. There's some
So
good
top
takeaways
result
there.
there, if you're watching the replay, is thinking about where to apply it in my business was 34%, followed by knowing what's possible and understanding how to prompt well. So I'm going to get into some more questions. While I'm doing that, we would love to get some feedback for you to fill out a survey. It just takes a couple of moments. You can do it while I'm asking these questions, and it just helps us shape what topics to do for Reboot. And all the AIs that we have done today is because of the feedback we got on previous sessions. So you can either use a QR code there, or in the chat, admin has written where that survey is. Okay, so a couple more, and I'm putting these in big categories because
Yeah.
we have a lot of questions and I want to get the biggest ones. A lot of questions about agents that they call different things like gems or GPTs, depending on what tool you're using. A lot of people are saying, how do I build it? This seems like a lot, but I really want to do it. Like, I don't even know where to start.
Okay, awesome question. Okay, so the first thing to know is that agents are not custom bots. So if you have played with a tool, so if you have played with gems in Gemini, they're actually called agents in Copilot, which is very misleading because they're not agents. They're called agents in Copilot, gems in Gemini, skills or projects in Claude, custom GPTs in ChatGPT. They're kind of like your main ones. If you've played with something like that, that's not an agent. Right. So what they are a custom version of a large language model. So they are like that skills file I showed. That is an instruction file about how to do a particular job. And then you kind of get the combined power of your instructions and the large language model that do a thing for you. They do it according to those instructions every time. So the key difference with that and an agent is an agent doesn't have set instructions that it follows every single time. It just has a lot of context about how to think, and it thinks through how to do something. So this is why I say like custom bots are like junior staff, right? So if you hire someone to write your Instagram content, then that would be like a custom bot that is inside one of these tools. So gems, custom GPTs, skills, projects, agents, and Copilot. They do something in a particular way because they have instructions about how to do it. An agent actually sits over the top of that, and it's like a manager. And it has access to lots of potentially different skills or little staff members that live underneath it that it can call on in order to execute something if and when it deems it appropriate to call on them. So an agent is like, yeah, I want to, okay, you're like my client success manager. My client success manager on any given day might realize that they need a different connection of skills in order to execute on something. So the client manager on Monday might realize that a school we've been working with needs an urgent report. And so they actually use a report writing employee to do that for them. Whereas on Tuesday, they might realize that there's a whole bunch of unanswered emails. So then they call on the email responder to write email responses. So agents don't follow a set process. They just have lots of context and the ability to make decisions and decide their own process. If you want to build agents, then you're looking at tools like Claude Code, like Manus, like OpenClaw or Codex, or you can use a combination of them. You don't have to. What I always tell people is like, do custom bots first really well, because just like hiring a human team, we want employees that we keep a close eye on. And then as our team grows, then you go, oh, now I want a manager to manage them instead of me managing them. It's the same sort of system when you think about growing your AI team. So yeah, start with custom bots first, get really clear around your instructions. I also don't write any instructions. I open up large language models and I say, hey, I want to build, let's say, a skills file to manage my inbox. I'm just going to talk to you for the next 20 minutes about how I manage my inbox. And then you're going to write the skills file. So then I switch into voice mode and I just blab away, like while I'm walking my dog or while I'm driving to the airport. I pick a task off my list. I talk for as long as I possibly can about how I do that task and how I make decisions. And then I ask the large language model to repackage that as a set of instructions for it to follow.
Now, Nici, people listening to this, and there's a combination of wow and like wow, and I and I think to remember this is Nici's jam. This is what she does. She does it for clients. She also teaches people how to do this as part of like the work that she does. So if you're thinking, I don't even know, like that is just wow, I can't even. It's because it's what she does. Um, this 1 hour webinar is not to teach you how to do it. It's an exposure about how we should use ethics. And if you are curious, there's a lot more information about finding more about this. The purpose of today is just to open up your mind of how it can be used ethically and to give you a bit
Yeah.
more confidence of what the abilities are.
And also the purpose is, right, that you can't do any of that wow stuff if you don't get clear on what good looks like, on what safe ethical use looks like for you. So, for example, like again, if I go back to my inbox manager, when I described how I mark and tag my emails, for example, then all I did was I connected a large language model to my email inbox. And the only thing I let it do for 5 days was tag emails, right? So I wrote all these instructions around how I manage my inbox, who my clients are. I gave it examples about how I respond. I talked about when I delegate to my team, yada, yada. For 5 days, all I did was say, okay, like I just every day I want you to do a sweep of my inbox and tag the emails as like respond now, respond today, FYI, delegate to my team. Then after 5 days, I watched it and I gave it corrections. I was like, no, you tagged that one as reply today, but actually it's just a newsletter. Or you tagged that one as urgent, but actually that's just some like thing that we get CC'd in on behalf of our clients tool or whatever. So I was giving it corrections and feedback. Then once we got to those 5 days and it felt like it was doing a really good job, I was like, okay, cool. Now I want you to do that and also draft responses to people, but don't send them ever. Right. And then I just watched it do that for a little while. And then after I felt like I could trust that, I said, okay, great. Now you're allowed to send emails to my team, but not to outside people. Still to outside people, I only want you to write a draft. And at the bottom of the draft, it says, this was written by Nici's AI email assistant, but Nici reviews every email before it's sent. Right. So again, this is just me baking in what good looks like. And I can only ever get to a point now where, like, honestly don't know the last time I opened my email inbox. I usually just talk to my AI tool that's read all my emails and I tell it what to do, right? That only happened because I was really clear about what good looked like. So when I talk about safe, responsible use, this is why I get passionate about it. Because if you just let AI read all your emails and start drafting responses, I guarantee you at some point you will land in a world of pain of having sent something that's offended somebody or the wrong information somewhere or cited something incorrectly or just missed something that's really important. You have to gradually bake in what good looks like, and even more so than we do with a human, because humans are meant to have emotional buy-in. You're meant to hire a human that cares about your business at some point, right? AI will never actually care about you and the business. It won't go home at night and lie in bed being like, oh God, maybe I did that wrong today. It's like moved on. It's helped 10 million other people that day, right? So it's just really good to remember that if you ever want that, you need to put in the work to clearly describe what good looks like to you. That's the best way to keep yourself safe.
And I think that is a great closer, Nikki, on like this ethical use of AI. If you could just pop to the next slide.
Yes.
As we close out today, I just want to remind you that we've got our future webinars coming up. Next week, we're talking about negotiation habits. The week after, cash flow clarity. And if you're curious today about AI chatbots, about humanizing your automation, there's also a session on that on the 9th of June. And then our final one is on the 16th of June. So, Nikki, look, the chat went wild today, and there is so many Q&A that I've done my best just to capture how we can answer the most amount of questions. But it's such a juicy topic, and it's got its own controversy. But I love how you've thought about using AI tools and how to put that ethics and thinking it through properly, not just doing it because it's this new shiny thing. There is a
Yes.
responsibility of how we use it.
Yeah, and that is, such a beautiful takeaway for everyone. Just because it's there doesn't mean you always should, but if you do it well, it's a very, very exciting time to be alive.
Thank you so much, Nikki.
Thank
Everyone
you,
that signed
everyone.
up today will on Friday you will get the recording of this. And if you think there's someone else that would be interested on it, make sure you forward it to them and invite them to our next week's session. And we'd love to get your feedback so we can make sure we're getting these sessions on target. I can tell from the questions in the chat that this was a very juicy topic. So thank you so much, Nici Sweaney from AI Her Way.
Thank you, everyone. So lovely to have you all with us today. Such a pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you.